If you like psychology videos, subscribe to Psychology in Minutes. Have you ever noticed that no matter who you date, you somehow end up having the same relationship problems? Maybe every partner eventually feels emotionally distant. Maybe you always become the one fixing everyone's problems. Maybe you constantly feel abandoned, ignored, or unappreciated. The faces change, the names change, and the circumstances change. Yet the emotional experience somehow feels strangely familiar. Most people assume the problem is bad luck, poor partner choices, or simply being attracted to the wrong people. But what if the real reason has been with you long before any of these relationships began? What if the arguments you're having today aren't really about your partner at all? What if you're reacting to an invisible relationship blueprint that was created decades ago inside your family? Today, we're exploring how unspoken family dynamics secretly shape your romantic relationships, why you keep repeating familiar emotional patterns, why some people seem to recreate the same relationship over and over with different partners, and whether it's actually possible to break free from those patterns and build healthier connections. Imagine two people meeting for the first time. On the surface, it looks like a simple attraction. They enjoy each other's company, share similar interests, and feel chemistry. But psychology suggests something much deeper may be happening beneath awareness. Long before we consciously evaluate a potential partner, our brain is scanning for familiarity. Not necessarily healthy familiarity, just familiarity. This idea comes from something psychologists call the internal working model, a concept rooted in attachment theory. Think of it as a relationship GPS installed during childhood. As children, we spend years learning what love looks like, what conflict feels like, how emotions are expressed, and whether our needs are consistently met. We don't learn these lessons through lectures. We learn them through thousands of small interactions with the people who raise us. If affection was predictable, we learned that relationships are generally safe. If affection was inconsistent, we may learn that love feels uncertain. If emotional needs were ignored, we may learn that asking for support is risky. Over time, these experiences become the framework through which we understand relationships. This is where things get interesting. Many people don't choose partners who make them feel safe. They choose partners who make them feel familiar. Consider someone who grew up with an emotionally distant parent. That parent wasn't necessarily abusive or cruel. They may have provided food, shelter, and support, but emotional connection was limited. As an adult, this person repeatedly finds themselves attracted to emotionally unavailable partners. From the outside, it seems irrational. Why would someone voluntarily choose relationships that leave them feeling lonely? The answer is that emotional distance feels familiar. Their nervous system recognizes it. The relationship doesn't feel healthy, but it feels known. And our brains often prefer familiar pain over unfamiliar uncertainty. This pattern connects to a concept first explored by called repetition compulsion. The idea suggests that people unconsciously recreate unresolved emotional experiences from childhood. It's as if part of the brain keeps trying to revisit old emotional wounds in hopes of finally achieving a different outcome. Imagine spending your childhood desperately seeking approval from a highly critical parent. Every compliment feels rare and valuable. Every criticism feels devastating. As an adult, you may find yourself drawn toward partners who are similarly critical. Not because criticism feels good, but because part of you hopes that this time you'll finally earn the approval that always felt just out of reach. What looks like attraction is sometimes an unconscious attempt to heal an old wound. Another hidden influence comes from the unspoken rules operating inside families. Every family has them. Some families teach that emotions should never be discussed. Others teach that conflict must be avoided at all costs. Some teach that love is earned through achievement. Others teach that taking care of everyone else's needs is more important than expressing your own. Children absorb these rules without realizing it. Years later, those rules quietly become the foundation of adult relationships. Someone who learned that love must be earned may become a perfectionist partner, constantly trying to prove their worth. Someone who learned that emotions are dangerous may struggle with vulnerability and intimacy. Someone who learned that conflict leads to rejection may avoid difficult conversations altogether. One particularly powerful family dynamic is something called triangulation. This occurs when a child becomes emotionally involved in adult conflicts. Maybe one parent regularly complained about the other parent to the child. Maybe the child became the family peacemaker, constantly trying to prevent arguments. Maybe they acted as an emotional support system for a struggling parent. At the time, this may have seemed normal, but the child learns a powerful lesson. Your job is to manage other people's emotions. Years later, that lesson often appears inside romantic relationships. These individuals become the caretakers. They solve everyone's problems. They absorb emotional stress. They feel responsible for keeping the relationship functioning. At first, this behavior can seem admirable. They appear supportive, dependable, and selfless. But eventually, it becomes exhausting. They begin carrying responsibilities that don't belong to them. They struggle to set boundaries. They feel guilty when prioritizing themselves. They often attract partners who are emotionally dependent because the dynamic feels familiar to both people. Another consequence of growing up in these environments is difficulty with direct communication. If direct confrontation felt unsafe as a child, many adults develop indirect ways of handling conflict. They vent to friends instead of speaking to their partner. They withdraw emotionally. They drop hints instead of expressing needs clearly. They avoid uncomfortable conversations altogether. The problem is that intimacy requires direct communication. Without it, misunderstandings multiply and resentment quietly grows. The survival strategies that protected us as children often become relationship problems as adults. A child who learned to keep everyone happy may become a people-pleasing adult, unable to set boundaries. A child who learned to emotionally withdraw during stressful situations may become a partner who shuts down during conflict. A child who learned that achievement earns love may grow into an adult who feels valuable only when they are successful. These strategies weren't mistakes. They were adaptations. They helped us survive. The challenge is recognizing when they no longer serve us. Have you ever noticed that some disagreements feel much bigger than they should? Your partner forgets to text you back, and suddenly you're overwhelmed with anxiety. They seem distracted, and you instantly feel rejected. They criticize something small, and you become intensely defensive. Often the emotional reaction isn't just about what happened in the moment. It's connected to something much older. Psychologists refer to this as implicit memory. Unlike regular memories that we consciously remember, implicit memories exist beneath awareness. They influence emotions, reactions, and physical sensations without us realizing where they're coming from. When a current situation resembles a past emotional experience, the brain reacts as if both situations are happening simultaneously. Your partner's delayed text isn't just a delayed text. It unconsciously connects to earlier experiences of emotional inconsistency. Their criticism isn't just criticism. It activates old feelings of inadequacy that may have existed for years. This helps explain why many couples have the same argument over and over again. Research consistently shows that most recurring relationship conflicts are not really about the topics being discussed. The argument about dishes may actually be about feeling unsupported. The argument about texting may really be about abandonment. The argument about money may be about safety and security. Couples often spend years debating surface-level issues while missing the deeper emotional fears underneath them. At this point, you might be wondering whether any of this can actually change. If these patterns were formed during childhood, are we stuck with them forever? Fortunately, the answer is no. The brain remains capable of change throughout life. But change requires more than awareness. Insight is the beginning, not the destination. One helpful starting point is identifying the role you played within your family. Were you the caretaker, the peacemaker, the achiever, the invisible child, the rebel? Understanding your role often reveals the expectations and beliefs you unconsciously carry into adult relationships. Another useful exercise is paying attention to emotional triggers. The next time you feel intensely upset, pause and ask yourself a simple question. What does this feeling remind me of? Not what does it remind me of logically, but emotionally. Sometimes the answer reveals connections that stretch back years or even decades. Learning direct communication is equally important. Instead of assuming others know what you need, practice expressing feelings clearly and honestly. Instead of saying, "You never care about me," try saying, "When plans change unexpectedly, I feel unimportant." One creates defensiveness, the other creates understanding. It can also be helpful to question familiarity itself. Ask yourself whether you're attracted to someone because they're genuinely healthy for you, or because they recreate an emotional environment your nervous system already understands. The answer can be surprisingly revealing. Perhaps most importantly, remember that healthy relationships may initially feel unfamiliar. If chaos was normal during childhood, stability can feel strange. If inconsistency felt exciting, reliability may feel boring. If emotional intensity was confused with love, calm connection may seem less attractive. But unfamiliar doesn't mean wrong. Sometimes healing means learning that love doesn't have to be earned, chased, rescued, or survived. It can simply be experienced. The most powerful realization psychology offers is that your patterns are not your destiny. The arguments you keep repeating, the people you keep choosing, and the fears you keep carrying all developed for reasons that once made sense. They were adaptations to your environment. And because they were learned, they can also be unlearned. Your childhood may have written the first chapters of your relationship story, but it does not have to write the ending. The moment you begin recognizing the invisible blueprint guiding your relationships is the moment you gain the ability to create a new one. And sometimes the healthiest relationship you'll ever build begins not when you find a different partner, but when you finally understand the person you've been all along. Subscribe to Psychology in Minutes for more.